Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today we're learning Masechtas Yevamot Daf Vav. We are officially on the top of Vav Amud Aleph, but we're going to review the very bottom of Hey Amud Beis. We were trying to find a source of how we find Asei's Doichelos Asei Sheish Bo Kares in order to be able to understand why we would even think that when it comes to a situation of Yibum, which there is an element of Kares, that you would maybe think that you should do Yibum with your Ereva, if not for the Gzera Shava to tell us otherwise. So we ended up saying perhaps we can learn out from Kibbud Avim. So let's actually just begin with those words. Desanya, maybe honoring your parents is so important that you can even be Deicha Shabbos. You have to fear your parents, and then right next to it says Veshabsose Tishmaru, and you also have to keep Shabbos. So therefore, we learn everyone is obligated to honor Hashem, and therefore you have to keep Shabbos. And it doesn't matter even if your parents tell you to violate Shabbos, and seemingly you're violating Kibbud Avim, you're not being Mekayim the mitzvah, so you don't do it. So my love, so therefore a mitzvah's aseh of Kibbud Avim you cannot do. It does not push. It's not doicha Shabbos, which is a los aseh sheish bo kares. But why do you need a pasuk to tell you that? So this, the Gemara says as follows. This is the Rabbi. My love, they're asking you to do Isuri Diraisa. With time to cause of Rachman Hashem Tishmar Halav Hachi Dachi. So this is the Raya. That you need a pasuk to show that you don't need to honor, you're not supposed to honor your parents, instead you're supposed to keep Shabbos. Mashma, without this drasha, then you would maybe think that Aseh is Daichelos Aseh Sheish Bo Kares, because you're violating a kares, which is Shabbos, violating one of the Isur Deraisa. Raisa is low. It's not necessarily, is this talking about the issue of an Isur Deraisa, of cooking and the like, as we continue to Vav Amud Aleph. It's a lav de machamer, regarding leading an animal. So that is, as Rashi says, that's a lav. You're not to do work, and also your animal's not to do work. Now this lav, there's no kares, because you didn't do a maisa megufe with your own body. So therefore, even though it's a lav, you're not allowed to violate that. That's an element of chilul Shabbos, but it's not a losa se sheish bo kares. So therefore, you're right. Maybe this is just coming to tell you that the chiddush is that otherwise you can think an aseh is doichelos aseh, and that we did establish already from the mitzvah of tzitzis, that it could even have shatnez in it. However, how do we know a los aseh which has kares? So therefore it's not a raya. So where it says v'fil hachi lo dachi, el de kaimul the aseh aseh v'dachi los aseh ligmar mahachad lo lidchi. So why don't we can actually learn here the opposite, that the fact that we're talking about a case of chayim of mechamer, which is mashma, that when it comes to an aseh going against a los aseh, you should be able to learn that it's not doicha. The fact that it brings this down, that you're not allowed to be doicha Shabbos, even though it's a los aseh greda. The Shabbos, the chamiri, we can say, well, maybe you're right. Normally an aseh is doicha los aseh, but when it comes to Shabbos, we're not going to allow even that, because Shabbos is so chomer. But Tana ba'al makoi, our Tana is just mentioning this generally. V'lo kaparich, it doesn't ask to Sanya. Yachol omer lo aviv. If let's say the father asks you hayitame, that you should become impure, or shermulo al tachzir, or he tells you, you found this lost object, there's a mitzvah, a shos aveda, don't return it, yochel yishmalo, you would think that you should listen to him. So we see we're not machalik between Shabbos and other mitzvahs, that just like you have to keep Shabbos, you have to do all the other mitzvahs, you don't listen to your parents. So we should also now learn that by mechamer, that an aseh is not doicha alos aseh. So we should see actually the opposite against the whole idea of tzitzis. So Ella mishum deikol lemifrach malhanach shechein hechsher mitzvah. The whole concept of why we cannot learn out from kibbud av v'em is because of hechsher mitzvah. Says Rashi, Ma lahanach shachat li bashali. If your father tells you to cook, which is the rights on Shabbos, shachin hechsher mitzvah, b'chol Shabbos, b'akiris losa say hu b'kayim asay, the kibbud. By you violating Shabbos, that is how you are listening to your father. That the only way you could listen and be mekayim the words of your parents is by doing chilul. V'zehu hechsher kiyumo, the actual kaymo b'lo akiris lav. There's no way you could fulfill their words because they're telling you to do a violation. Hilkach ilu kosav es shabsoyse tishmaru. If it didn't say regarding keeping Shabbos, havamina lidchi, you would think maybe you could push it off because there's no other way of doing the mitzvah without otherwise violating the law. So maybe you would think that you could actually listen to your parents in that circumstance, even though it's a losa seishish bokaris. So the will not from yibum. But yibum lo. Zebulvad hechsher kiyamase shahar yachal lachloitz lo yakar lav shel erva lo yitzorch aleha. Again, you don't need the pasuk of aleha. So there's, again, when it comes to giving an aim, there's no other way to fulfill the words of your father except to violate Shabbos. But by the yibum, sheshbo ereva, you could do chalitza to avoid the whole lav sheshbo kares. So just because maybe by Shabbos and kibbud av v'em we see aseh daichalosa say sheshbo kares, maybe it's only because you have no choice, because if you don't do this, if you don't, the only way of listening to your father and being mekayim the mitzvah is by violating the law. That's why we say maybe you should actually do the aseh. No, we need a pasuk, but you don't need a pasuk when it comes to yibum, because you could still do what you need to do. Maybe not yibum, but you could do chalitza, and that would be a way of not violating the law of having relations with an erva. This is actually question TA 21. It says, Isa b'gemar de leika l'melef yibo mikibad av, which is referring to a losa seishish bokaris. De malahanach shachein hechsher mitzvah. So ma habir leperish Rashi. So let's just read how he says it. Kibad av lo shaykh lo kiris halav. Mashein kim b'yibum diyachal lachlites. Okay, as we just said. All right, weiter. So kibad av aim, we cannot derive this from that. So let's continue. Ella, perhaps, maybe, when it comes to the building of the Beis HaMikdash, Tesanya, it's a pretty important thing. We want the Beis HaMikdash. Maybe we should even build it on Shabbos. Tam Loimer, the Shamsoise Tishmaru, Umikdashi Tirau, Kulchem Chayavim Bechvaidi. So even though as a mitzvah of building the Beis HaMikdash, there's a losa, say, Shesh Mokares, of violating Shabbos. So why do we need this pasuk? Ma'ila b'boyin v'saiser. We're talking about mamish isuri dirais, of building and knocking things down. The time because of Rachman Hashem so tishmaru halav hachi dachi. So again, maybe we can learn out from Beis HaMikdash that the fact that you need a pasuk is because otherwise you would say that an aseh is daichel lo aseh sheish bakaris lo lav de mechamer. What is the area in which a person is going to be really involved in building the Beis HaMikdash? Leading an animal. Okay, so you want to lead an animal to maybe do certain things for the binyan habayis, but that's, as we said, that is not something in which is a haskaris. We feel hachi will dachi. Nonetheless, it's not daich. So the el de kaimul and the asiyasei v'dachi losasei ligmer mahacha de lo dachi. L'chari, we should learn from here that an asay is not daich losasei, because here we're just talking about again, mechamer is just a regular losasei. It's a losasei without kares, and nonetheless you can't do the asay. B'chite mashani lavi de shabbos the same shakavataria. It's more chamer v'hatana ba'almakoi v'loy kaparach. He says the same thing. The Sanya Yochel Amrlo Aviv. Your father says he Tame that I want you to become Tame Yushamaloi Al Taxir. Don't return this lost object. Yochel Yishmael Tamil Loimer Ish Email Babatira V'Goimer. Kulcham Yam Bechvaidi. Everyone has to do my mitzvahs. El Mishum Dikol Mervach Malahana Shachin Hechsher Mitzvah. So again, there's an element of Hechsher Mitzvah namely that the only way that you can build the Beis HaMikdash is by physically doing Baina, which is Issur D'Oraisa on Shabbos, and that's a Lav Sheish Mokares. So again, maybe you would have a Havamina to think that when it comes to the Beis HaMikdash, because there's no other way to do it, that maybe you could actually be Machal Shabbos. That's why you need a pasuk over there. When it comes to an Erva, so in that situation, you could just do Chalitza, and therefore there's no Raya, or there's no need to have a pasuk to tell you that Naseh is Doichelosa say Sheish Mokares. That we don't apply that rule. So Hechsher Mitzvah typically Mahasam. So if it's Hechsher Mitzvah, we're going from over there. Says Rashi, the Ish Imu V'Aviv Tirau the Hechsher Mitzvah who V'lo Dachi. That even though it's a Hechsher Mitzvah, it's not Daiche. Says Rashi, Lomulei Lomehedar Lomichtav Hachesh Shav Sosti Tishmaru. Why do you need this extra drasha? Ela Lav the tail of Minei they feel below Hechsher Mitzvah. Ilo Ksiv Kra Behedya the Lo Dachi Armin the Dachim Kin Itzrach Aleha. Again, you need the word Aleha. That's what we're talking about over here. So basically, it's almost like Inyan. You already have this concept when it comes to Kibbut Ava Aim. You already learned this. So the fact that it's mentioned again, L'chor, it's coming to tell you in a situation, even in a situation where it's that there is no Hechsher Mitzvah. It should still work. So you're right. So the truth is, it's not an Inyan, because you don't need to teach us both the same thing, but we need that pasuk for something else. A person, maybe you would think, should be afraid of the Mikdash. That the Shabbos should keep. That's Mikdashi Tira'u. Now, Nemra Shemira b'Shabbos. It mentions keeping Shabbos, but Nemra Moira b'Mikdash. It mentions having this element of awe when it comes to the Beis HaMikdash. So Mashmir Ha'amur b'Shabbos, the fact that it's juxtaposed, just like when it comes to Shmir Shabbos, we continue Bava Midbeis. Lo Shabbos Ata Misyare. It's not that you're supposed to be afraid of Shabbos. Ela Mimishi Hizer al Shabbos. Rather, the one who's Zahir on Shabbos. In other words, you should have Yiras Hashem. Av Moira Ha'amur b'Mikdash. Lo Mikdash Ata Misyare. I don't want you to be afraid of this building. Elamishi Hiser al Hamikdash. So Vezuhi Moira Mikdash. So how does a person show Moira Mikdash? What is a person not supposed to do? So the Gemara in the last parak in Brachos says, you should not enter in the har bayis b'maklei with your stick, minaloi, or with shoes, which is, as we saw in Chagiga, that perhaps a person is mafunak who needs to wear shoes. Maybe he's pater from oyos re'iyah. B'pundaso, his money belt, b'avak shal gabi raglo, of the dust on his feet. Lo yasena kapandria, you're not allowed to make it into a shortcut. Or kika makavachemer, you're not supposed to spit over there. The Gemara in Brachos over there explains what the Kavachimer is. I only know during that time you're not allowed to do so. How do we know that also you're supposed to show an element of fear and respect? Even when the Beis HaMikdash is not around, Talmud Loimer, Tishmoru Mikdashi Tiro, Mashmir Hamur b'Shabbos Oilam, Avmor Hamur b'Mikdash Oilam. So just like we keep Shabbos, it doesn't matter before the Beis HaMikdash, during or after, you always keep Shabbos. So too, this element of fear, in other words, showing respect and awe of the Beis HaMikdash, even in the absence of the Beis HaMikdash, that needs to still take place. If you look at question 12, also this is TB 20, Nolam denying Moira Mikdash after Shas Chorban. So we say, because it's compared to the Hekesh of Shabbos. So too, showing fear to Hashem of this place is the oil. So now we're going to try a different source when it comes to kindling a flame on Shabbos. The Tanda de Rabbi Shmuel. It says you're not allowed to, out of the 39 malachos, it says you're not allowed to kindle a flame. So Matam Loimer, so we Matam Loimer. Eel Rabbi Yossi, Lulav, ilu Rav Nasan Lachalik. The Sani Havara Lulav Yatsa Div Rabbi Yossi Rav Nasan Omer Lachalik. We know there's this famous machlokes. Why does the pasuk mention Davka making a fire? Either it's tell you Lachalik that you're over one of the Lamates Malachos. If let's say you violate a few of them, you're chayav al kalachas v'achas. So if you do it b'shogi, you have to bring multiple chatos, karban chatos. Or it's telling you that no, the other 38 malachos, it's your mamash going to be chayav skilo. But when it comes to havara, that's the exception to lulav. So the Omer Rava Tana Moshavos kakashule. The question is the fact that it says the word Moshavos. Moshavos matamud Omer. What is that coming to teach us? Now, when it says Moshavos, Rashi says that's b'chol makam shatim yoshvim afil chutz la'aretz. That it means these dinim don't just apply in the Yerushalayim, the Beis Hamikdash, even in the Medina outside of Eretz Yisrael. So matamud Omer michti. Shabbos chavis agufi. We know that Shabbos is something which is upon ourselves. The chavis aguf no higas ben baretz ben b'chutz la'aretz. There's a gemara in the first parak in Kedushin. It's machalik between mitzvos which are connected to the earth as opposed to mitzvos that are on me. So chovas haguf is noig everywhere, like Shabbos. Moshavos the kasav rachamana b'Shabbos lamali. So why do you need a pasuk of Moshavos? We know it's a chovas haguf. If it's a chovas haguf, then you keep Shabbos everywhere. Doesn't matter where. So you shouldn't need a pasuk of Moshavos. That seems to be extra. The answer is Mishumer Mishmuel. Omer Talmud Echad Lefi Shenemar V'chi Be'ish Chet Mishpat Maves. Let's say the person has a death penalty upon them. They committed a crime which is a capital offense. V'humas, and therefore this person is going to be sentenced to death. Shomeani Ben B'chol Ben B'Shabbos. You would think that Beis Din has the authorization and maybe obligation to actually sentence him to death. Not just on a weekday, but if the Sak Din, the Gemar Din, is in Shabbos or is right before Shabbos, that the actual death penalty should be carried out on Shabbos. So Mani Mekam Mechaleh Mos Yumos. So what do we do when it says Mechaleh Mos Yumos? B'Shar Malachos Chutz Me'Misas Beis Din. When it comes to Misas Beis Din is different. It's like maybe when it comes to the Beis Hamikdash, Karbanos Sibor are allowed to be brought even during the time, even on Shabbos. So maybe there's also this type of dispensation or allowance for the Beis Din to be able to do these different misos on Shabbos. So maybe that's what it's coming to tell you. Oh, Eino Ela Fil Misas Beis Din. Maybe it's telling you that no, even Misas Beis Din, it doesn't make any difference. Even Misas Beis Din is not allowed on Shabbos. Umani Memekayim B'Humos. Why does we have the word B'Humos? B'Chol V'Lo B'Shabbos. That you can only sentence him to death during the week. But you can't do it on Shabbos, even though you have an obligation to sentence them to death, because that's what the Torah is telling you as a Beis Din to do. But you have a losa say sheish bokares that you're not allowed to do death penalties, and those death penalties themselves are ways of violating Shabbos. Oh, enu elafil b'Shabbos. Maybe you could even do it on Shabbos. That's the pasuk of savaru eish, that you're not allowed to do malachos which are fire related. Which are connected to Misas Beis Din, even on, you can't do it on Shabbos. Now you need a pasuk to tell you can't do that. Now that these are the laws that happen for all future generations, all places. The Omer Achman lo Savaru. It's telling you that in Beis Din still they cannot violate the Shabbos by doing chilul. And send this person to death. Now, my love, Rav Nasan he. Maybe we're going to say that this is like the shita of Rav Nasan. That's l'chalik, namely havara, kindling a flame, is actually an isur d'oraisa. Who knows there's kares. They're l'chalik yotzasa, and therefore you're chayav kares. The v'tayim because of rachamonos avaru halav hachi dachi. So maybe this is the raya. We paskin maybe like Rav Nasan. Therefore, when it comes to havara, making a fire, for example, when it comes to sreifa, in which is one of the arba misas Beis Din, you have to do an isur d'oraisa, right? You have to you have to cook it. You have to make sure it's boiling hot, which is an isur bishul. So, or even forgetting about that, you have to make a fire. So it's a din of havara. So focusing on that second thing I said. So since there's an issue of havara, so therefore, are you allowed to do it? So the Beis Din, no. We have a pasuk that says you're not allowed to. Why do you need a pasuk? Must be because otherwise an asay could be daichalosa say shish bokares, that maybe Beis Din otherwise would be able to carry out this death penalty, even though by doing so they'll violated Shabbos, which is an issue d'oraisa, because havara is l'chalik. When it says lo, Rabbi Yossi, maybe the sheet is really like Rabbi Yossi, that it's only a lav, as we said before, just like machamer. It's just a lav, namely, that it's not a situation of an asay doichalosa say shish bokares. Maybe it's not asay, it's doichalosa say. So Gemara says, avitahabi nami Rabbi Yossi. Fine, so let's say it's like Rabbi Yossi, who says that havara is only a lav. But Eimedim Rabbi Yossi, havara lav yatsasa. Havara Gredasa havarasa the Beis Din bishul psiluhu. The reality is, as Rashi says, sha'eva, they actually have to heat up and cook this lead, matich v'zarka l'toich piv, and throw it into this guy's mouth. Yoredis l'toich me'av, and it goes through his esophagus, and it goes into his stomach, and it burdens his insides. The high bishul gomerhu ve'amalachu. There's no question this is bishul gomer. You have to mamish cook it boiling hot, beyond yad selenisbo, and you're going to pour it down this guy's throat. That's the only way you're going to kill him, if it's boiling hot, which means you violate an issa d'oraisa. So even if you want to tell me the havara is not an issa d'oraisa to the point that there's a din kares, but certainly when it comes to bishul there is. So l'chayra you could still learn out from, even according to him, l'chayra it's a raya. V'yom Rav Sheshes mali bishul psila mali bishul samanim. It doesn't make any difference what you're cooking. If it's a psila shel ever, again, a little means like a wick, but it means of lead, or if it's some type of spices or whatnot, so you're violating lav sheish bo kares. So therefore, this really it should be a good raya. So Rav Shimi Barashi, no hai tana lo mishum de asiyase v'dachil osa say. This tana is not bringing down the whole idea is that an asay is not dachil osa say. El mishum de ma'asim mekabel chaymer, but rather he's coming to teach us from a kabel chaymer. Says Rashi, the itzrach de notziv lekra l'meisa misas based in b'Shabbos lamishum de'iu lo dashmin and havamina dachya. The whole concept of this pasuk is not to tell you, oh, otherwise you would think, and asay is daichalos, asay shish bokares. No, mishum taimad asay dachi el mishum dehavi ma'isi le b'kal b'chaymer de dachi Shabbos. Says the Gemara. This is what the reason why the pasuk is there. Umani mekayim mechalel mos yumas. Why does it mention that? Mishar malachos chutz mimisas Beis Din. It's talking about all the other malachos, excluding the Beis Din from doing it. Al mimisas Beis Din the chayish Shabbos mekabel chaymer. Maybe you would think from a kabel chaymer that they would be able to be doicha Shabbos as we continue to Zayin Badal. And what is this? Voda. When it comes to the voda in the Beis Hamikdash, as we mentioned, shehi chamura, that it's something which is strict. Nonetheless, v'doicha Shabbos. Nonetheless, it does push off Shabbos. So at sicha, when it comes to murder, doicha oisa, it pushes it off. It pushes Shabbos off. What does that mean? Says Rashi, Shim ha'yorotzech kohen. If let's say you have a rotzeach, a murderer who's a kohen, avoda, and he wants to do the avoda in the Beis Hamikdash. So Beis Din shoichin mavina yisol amos. So the Beis Din can grab him and take him away. So the fact is, the Ritzicha, this person who is a Kohen who killed Doicha Osa, that is stronger than Avoda. So even though Avoda is so important, that's Doicha Shabbos, because you can bring Karbanos on Shabbos, but if you have a Kohen who is a convicted murderer, and he's up there, and he wants to do the Avoda, there's questions if he's on the Mizbeach, if there's the Mizbeach will protect him, it's Gemara and Makos, elsewhere. So in that situation, when it comes to trying to do the avoda, no, he's not going to do the avoda because Ritzicha is stronger. We'll take him away. So Shabbos shenidches. So Shabbos that's pushed off Mimnei Avoda Eno Din Shedei Ritzicha Deicha Isa. So since Shabbos is pushed off by Avoda, so Shabbos is not so strong because Avoda is stronger than it. Ritzicha is stronger than Avoda. So since that's the case, like if B is stronger than A and C is stronger than B, then C must be stronger than A. So that's what we're saying here. So you would think that for sure Ritzicha is going to be Doicha Shabbos, right? So you would maybe think, based on this Kal V'chomer, there's a shtickle pircha on this Kal V'chomer, but just Pashut Pshat is that Rashi over here, Taisa says over here, when it says Shneimrim im mizbechim v'afil im ein sham kayin acher roy la'avoda nidches. There's no one else that can do the avoda. We still pull him away. So the question is, so maybe when it comes to Ritzicha, we're going to put this guy to death on Shabbos, because obviously Ritzicha is, even though Ritzicha is very strong, we're not going to allow this person to do the avoda. And again, even though we do the avoda on Shabbos, so maybe if we can do malacha through avoda on Shabbos, we can also do Ritzicha on Shabbos. So the point of all this is, it's through a Kal V'chomer that we would maybe think that we should kill him. It's nothing to do with Naseh Doicha, Lo Saseh Sheish Bo Kares. It's just Pashut, based on a Kal V'chomer, we would through logic deduce, we think that maybe the Beis Din does have the right to have him sentenced to death, but the reality is we don't. But this is not going to be any support to us to prove that when it comes to the case of Yibum, that you would otherwise, without this pasuk, think that Naseh Doicha Lo Saseh Sheish Bo Kares. Ad Kan.